Welcome to the Nairobi Health Show, everybody. I've got Cheri Stoka back for another episode. This one's going to be really interesting because it's a case study of my own GI tract test. And Cheri, thanks so much for doing that. It was a lot of fun, and I think people will find this very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited to go through this. Obviously, we got to know each other over the last couple months, and my focus is weight loss, and gut health is paramount. It's foundational to human health, and I know that when we were talking, I guess, why don't you tell me so I don't put words in your mouth? Why did you decide that you wanted to try this out?
That's a really great question. And actually, before we do, for some people who didn't hear the first episode I did with you, let me quickly read your bio so people have a little more understanding of where we're coming from. Okay, let me give them a little more backstory.
Yes.
So Cheri is an expert in weight loss, and she has a clinic, and she's helped a lot of people to lose weight, and she's also put a high emphasis on testing, and that too many people are going in blind to whatever health improvement they're trying to make, and they don't know what underlying factors may be holding them back. She's a former professional soccer player, a lifelong athlete, so she understands how important exercise and nutrition are to perform optimally and feel your best. But oftentimes, you must look beyond exercise and nutrition and dig deeper into other aspects of health. Sometimes healthy eating and exercising more can't resolve certain health conditions and imbalances in the body. And Cheri, that little bit of your bio that I just read kind of has a bit of that answer in there, that when you ask me why I wanted the test, first of all, I consider myself an amateur biohacker. And what I mean by that for me is simple tests. Like, I always get my yearly physical, for one thing. There's just no reason not to, seeing as all yearly physicals are free now for everyone in the United States. And there's no reason to not get that test. And I find there's valuable information on that. In addition, I have done a blood test about every year on top of the yearly physical, because I want to know what's going on in my body, especially in regards to deficiencies with vitamins and minerals and any areas of my health that I could determine stuff that I may not intuitively know. So I love having science validate or point out things that I couldn't know. I find as human beings, Cheri, I think one of the flaws in our firmware, how on your electronic devices every now and then you get, it's time to update your firmware.
Yeah.
I think that as human beings, we have plenty of problems in our software and our firmware. And every now and then we need them updated. For example, sometimes we feel like we're doing better than we are. Or some people, maybe with low self-esteem or with issues, past problems they've been through in their life, maybe it's the opposite. They feel worse than they objectively are, whether in their health or their emotional health or whatever the case might be. So I have this basic premise that I want to test, not guess.
Yeah.
And so the GI test is something I've never done before. It's always blood work. And so on our interview, when you mentioned that you do this and that oftentimes the causes of why weight doesn't come off for some people or what's going on in the gut, we all know more about gut health now. We know that the gut is called the second brain and that our brain and our gut work together in a much more important way than we ever used to think. And so putting all that together, I just thought, it's time for me to do a biohacking test. And so this time I'm going to do Cheri's test. I want to find out what's going on in my gut microbiome. And then the fascination with these unknowns, like in your gut microbiome, there's parasites, there's viruses, there's bacteria. There are imbalances of bacteria. There's the so-called good bacteria and bad bacteria. And then there's, was it trillions of cells in there doing their thing, right?
Yeah.
And so to me, it was just this mystery. And I thought, I want to get a test done. I want to see into this mystery and how well I'm doing.
Perfect. Yeah. So now that you set that stage and, and when I was talking to you and then I had you fill out the symptom assessment, because that gives me a good idea too, like not only what will we find, but do the symptoms align with maybe some things that you're experiencing. And, you know, your symptoms were not significant by any means. But again, like you said, I mean, the gut is the foundation. It's like, if you don't have a healthy gut, it's like the root of the tree. Everything will suffer. It will just be a struggle if you don't address that foundation. So yeah, the GI map, and I explained it to everybody that it's an awesome test. It really is. But there's many ways to look at the ecosystem and the gut microbiome. And I just happen to really like this particular test because it does break down, like you were talking about, like different sections of the good, the bad, inflammation, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly. And yeah, I'm looking forward to going through this when you're ready.
Yeah. And so for those of you watching or listening, what we did is I said, Cheri, let's do this. I'll do the test and I'll put myself out there. I don't know what the results will be, but I'm willing to put myself out there and we'll review them together on a podcast. And full disclosure, she reviewed them with me privately already and we went over them. So I already know what's there, but I wanted you guys to see it and to see what this is like to get this test and what kind of information you learn. And so I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stream. And so first of all, Cheri, what is the test called again?
It's called the GI map.
Okay.
Yes.
And now just go through it. And we're going to have to kind of condense this. I mean, we won't go through it as long as you normally would with a patient. I just want you guys to get the general idea of just how deep this thing is, how much is there, and what kind of things you can learn from this test.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to reiterate, you know, our digestive tract, well, our body is made up of organisms. You know, we're made up of more bacteria than we are human cells, believe it or not. And so we want to look at what the balance is, because it's not just about bacteria. I mean, we have viruses, we have fungus, we have yeast. And really, you know, the gut takes a beating every single day. And in this modern world, it takes more of a beating. So we have to protect the gut. And so this is going to give us an idea of really what is going on. And so if you look at this first section, you see pathogens. So bacterial pathogens are bacteria that are not good. You know, pathogen means a disease-causing organism. So when I'm looking at this, you know, I'm looking at, okay, does Dave have any pathogens that were found? Less than DL means that there was less than a detectable level found. So you in this section passed all of these strains of bacteria, which is what you want for sure.
Nice.
Yes. And then going on to the next section is parasitic pathogens. So you can see that there's Cryptosporidium, Giardia, Entamoeba. These are parasitic pathogens that can cause disease, and you did not have any detectable level found as well.
Nice.
And I know we'll talk about it more, but we do. This is kind of a common area where we will see things creep up.
Okay.
Viral pathogens, 2 were tested. You did not have any viral pathogens, and so you passed the first page of the more significant pathogens, which is great. Okay.
And compared to others, how often is this an issue with your patients? Like just kind of throw a dart of maybe percentage of people who have an issue with pathogens when you do this test.
I would say this first page section is probably 30%. So it's not a lot, but it's a good number.
1 in 3 people. That's okay. So fantastic. So what's the next section after pathogens?
Yes. So we're going to scroll down. So if I can just go. Okay, perfect. The next section is Helicobacter pylori. So H. pylori, you can see here that there was some H. pylori found, but it was not elevated. And you can see here that a normal level is 1 to the exponent of 3. So essentially, H. pylori is a very unique organism or bacteria because it's one of few that can actually reside in the stomach lining. The stomach is so acidic, so most organisms cannot survive there. But Helicobacter H. pylori has the ability to burrow itself in the intestinal lining and kind of secrete certain enzymes that create almost a lower acidic environment. So I know when we were talking before, I mean, as we go through the test, I'll be able to determine, like, is this causing more of like a downstream effect? Because typically, you're always starting from the top and going down because it's always going to have effect going downstream. And with the H. pylori being there, a lot of people have it and it doesn't cause any problems. So that's what we needed to determine. Now, what I will say is you kind of like were on the border. I was like, I don't really see anything where I'm like, I think we should probably maybe treat and try to balance it out a little more. But the majority of people have really obvious signs of imbalances because of H. pylori. And I feel like the reason why you probably didn't have as much is because of all the healthy stuff that you do. Like the majority of our people are on multiple medications, they're on PPIs, they're on antibiotics, so they're already kind of disrupting the balance. So it's just, another thing that's adding to the disruption.
Okay.
So it was there, we'll talk a little bit more about the areas that were affected, and this would be this normal bacteria flora here. Now, this is all normal, obviously normal. It's healthy. You want it there. There was a little overgrowth in the Bacteroides fragilis, but that would be nothing to be concerned about at all.
Good.
And then these two down here, Akkermansia and Helicobacterium, are referred to as the keystone species. These protect you. I mean, they play multiple roles in the protection of your GI tract and obviously, all the other systems that are involved. And so oftentimes we don't even see these found. They're less than detectable level. And when they're not found, we know we have a long road to recovery because we have to try to repopulate the two most important species in your gut.
Huh. Mm-hmm. Do you do that through supplements or certain types of food or how?
Yeah, supplements and food and prebiotics. So they now have like precision prebiotics. So specific prebiotics that will target those specific strains. Okay. And you can really attribute this to your fruits and vegetables because that's where they thrive.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then this next section here is just looking at the ratio of, basically all of the different organisms will fall under two categories, Bacteroides, Firmicutes. So we're looking at a ratio. Is it out of balance? Yours, the Firmicutes were slightly elevated, but the ratio was within normal. So again, nothing that we would do or treat based on that.
Okay. So far, so good. I'm going to live. This is
great.
So
far, so good. Okay. And then we have opportunistic bacteria. So this is bacteria that actually has the propensity to overgrow given a compromised environment. So as I said earlier, the H. pylori has the ability to affect acidity levels up in the stomach. And just like medications, PPIs, all of that has significant long-term effects on your entire system because the stomach was meant to have acid. And when the stomach does not have acid, now different organisms can overgrow because it's in a lower acidic environment. And so we do see Streptococcus and Bacillus overgrow when the acidity has been affected. Now, It wasn't significant. You can see, I mean, this again is an exponential number. So it's a little bit more than just, 4.7 and 1.5 to the exponent of 5, but it's a little bit overgrown. Okay. So that's where, when I was talking to you before, usually just, making a few changes, suggestions based on what we talk about, and then kind of like really listening to your body. But down the road, if all of a sudden now there's certain things happening, you're like, okay, we gotta rebalance the H. pylori.
Now, when we were done with this last time, we did it in private, your main recommendation to me was to cut out dairy, based on the things that you saw that were out of line here. And I'm just gonna, you might want to slap my hand here, but basically, I part of my nutritional training is to eliminate all or nothing thinking and to try to think in terms of nuance rather than all or nothing. And I was having probably a glass of milk every day. I was having cheese pretty much every day with lunch. And I thought to myself, I don't want to cut out all dairy. I think what I'm going to do is cut back. And so many times I'll feel like having a glass of milk and I just won't. I've stopped having cheese every day. And so, Cheri, I don't know how you feel about that, but I didn't go all the way. And I know that if we're trying to do an elimination style diet to see, how that affects, then by not eliminating everything, I'm losing that benefit. However, I just felt like if dairy is the problem, I've probably cut out 70% of the dairy I was eating since we talked. Okay. Not 100%. And I'm feeling like over time, hopefully that'll make a difference. And maybe in a year, I'll get the test again and see where we're at. So I don't know how you feel about that with me not cutting it out 100%, but I did cut out 70% of dairy from my diet.
Yeah. So I think cutting down is always beneficial. Now, the section on the test is what we saw, and we'll get to it, but your immune system is overactive. And oftentimes that is from a food sensitivity. And dairy just in nature is inflammatory to the body. Dairy just in nature is very hard for humans to digest because the majority of us don't have the enzyme to break it down. And then you look at the component of these cows and how they're raised and the antibiotics that they're on and the hormones that they're injected with. That is what you're consuming. So it's not necessarily dairy 100 years ago. It's dairy now, which is a problem. And 9 times out of 10, 9.9 times out of 10, I mean, we're taking people off dairy, their face, their acne clears up, their gut issues. I mean, so when I saw your immune, your IG was overactive, it's usually our go-to is dairy and gluten, but your gluten wasn't super overactive. So that's where I was kind of like, all right, let's see, because you eat more dairy than most people, just in general. Most people don't have glasses of milk. So then I'm like, that was an easy target.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've cut down, just not 100%. The other thing is, I didn't want to get into label reading. I didn't want to have to figure out before I ate something if there was any dairy, that type of thing. And so part of it was just a lifestyle issue that it felt a bit extreme to me. And so I just went for the cut back rather than cut out.
Yeah. And I think, you don't have to get to a point where you're label reading. I think just the real obvious stuff, like you said, would be like the milk and the cheese. Because that would be the easiest place to start.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I mean, if your immune system is going to react, it's going to react whether you have 1 piece or 10. I mean, your symptoms might be worsened, but you would still get a reaction, whether it's just a small amount or a large amount.
Okay. So next test, if things aren't better, then I'll probably have to adjust again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So you want me to move on then?
Yeah.
Okay. This next section is potential autoimmune triggers. So there are certain strains of bacteria that are aligned or shown correlation with certain autoimmune conditions, and all of yours were normal, not elevated. Oftentimes we'll see very commonly strains that are correlated with inflammatory bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis, or MS. So yours were all in normal levels.
Okay.
Okay, fungus and yeast. So we also have a lot of this in our body, in our digestive tract. It can be there and it can be fine, but candida will overgrow very quickly when the immune system has been compromised for a period of time. Now, when I talked about your immune system, there's like a acute reaction, but there's no way for us to know that is, we know you don't have any autoimmune, you don't have any, you're healthy. So it's more of like an acute thing. So it's probably like every time you eat something, your body's reacting. And this also shows that, the immune system is likely intact because there's no overgrowth of the yeast that we're looking at here.
Okay.
And same as viruses. What I will say about the viruses is I haven't seen, and I told you, we do so many of these tests, and I have yet to find any positive results of these 2 viruses.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, it's like anything else, these things can lay dormant in our body forever, for our entire life. And then all of a sudden, some traumatic event, or let's say even a vaccination can put your body in a state where now all of a sudden other dormant species now are alive.
Right.
So
Wow.
yeah, you don't know if this is just a situation where most of them just are there, but they're not showing up.
Right. Okay.
No parasites.
That's good. I don't like the word parasite, and I don't like the thought of thinking there's some living inside of me without my permission. And again, let's go back to this though. How many people, when you get to this section on parasites, is this an issue for?
I would say 30% as well.
Again, okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most common, we do see this blastocystis, we see this Dientamoeba fragilis, Entamoeba coli. So yeah, we do see it for sure.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, and then I have not seen any worms. However,
that's also good. Another yucky thought, right? I got worms living inside of my microbiome.
I know, it's so crazy. And I haven't seen any on the test that showed positive, but what I can tell you is that when we put people on certain cleanses, they do see worms coming out. So we know that worms are not the most detectable in certain stool tests.
Okay.
So that's probably people probably have them. We just are not seeing these specific species show up.
Okay. And these must be microscopic, very, very tiny things.
Some of them are not.
Oh, really?
Some of them are very visible. Yes.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. It depends. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I know, it's kind of crazy.
So you have some people
Go ahead.
You have to do some deworming on some of your customers?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy. Oh, what does that show? Someone told me, I didn't watch it, but it's the aliens that live within us. We literally have this ecosystem of everything that lives within us. It is kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah, and that's really why I wanted to have this test, because I have no idea. Without this test, it's just guessing, right? Like based on how we feel. And like I said, I have little confidence in myself or in other people when they self-diagnose on what's going on in their body. And of course we can do a little bit of that. Of course we can do things like, how fast can you run a mile? There's some things that you can figure out. How much do I weigh? There's a certain amount of things that are very basic biohacking that we can do. But this one is probably like, to me, maybe the ultimate test of undetectable stuff that I would have absolutely no idea of and no way of intuitively knowing any of this information.
100%. And it's preventative, it's preventive health. Like, you know,
Right.
colonoscopies don't do anything until you have like a serious problem. I mean, there's so much we can learn. I mean, usually the people that are doing this, I mean, they have issues. They have autoimmunity. They're chronically fatigued. They're obese. I mean, so there's so much that we find, and when we can start to rebalance and get rid of the bad stuff, I mean, it literally changes people's lives. I mean,
Yeah. Wow.
So, but again, it's one piece to a very complex puzzle for some, right?
Yeah, but an absolutely critical piece that
Critical.
to me, this has been absolutely fascinating. I think if I would have known about this, Cheri, that 6, 7 years ago, whenever it was that I started down the biohacking path, I would have started with this test.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what I always say too. I'm like, just everybody, because you didn't really have any reason to do it other than you wanted to know,
Yeah.
because symptom wise, it's like, some people are so obvious, but it's like, you're going to find something, there's going to be something that comes up, and it just gives you the opportunity to be very strategic with your health.
Yes, absolutely. Love that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then intestinal health. So this is looking at markers that are going to tell us if you're having malabsorption. So steatocrit, if that's elevated, then we know that there's some fat malabsorption. So there's probably some inflammation going on. There's maybe leaky gut, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But you didn't have any of that. And then elastase is the function of your pancreas. So we want to know, are you producing enough enzymes to break down your food? And you are. So this is an ideal greater than 750. So that was all good. To tie it back to your condition, if H. pylori were a significant problem, then your enzymes would be sluggish because they would be overproducing because of the low acidity in the stomach. When the acidity in your stomach is supposed to break, that's your first line, breaking down certain proteins, breaking down certain fats. And if there's not enough acid, things start to go through intact. So then your body overproduces enzymes and to compensate for that, but everything seems to be working well.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. GI markers, beta glucuronidase. So this is looking at overall imbalances. This is looking at your body's ability to detoxify, specifically like liver detoxification. So that was good. We'll see this elevated. If this is elevated, I'm doing a liver cleanse on someone because their pathways are congested. And no matter what you do to try to detox them, if their liver and their detox pathways are clogged up, can you imagine? That's like trying to shove things down the drain when it's clogged up. Like, it doesn't make sense. So you have to open those pathways. Occult blood. So blood and stool. We did not find any blood and stool.
Always a good sign.
Always a very good sign. And then, so then this is where we get into these last two markers here, your immune response. Secretory IgA was elevated. And so your immune system, like I said, it's likely something you're eating. It's something environmental. Usually it's what you're eating. And that's where I started to go down the road of dairy when I was looking at your food log, because I'm like, that's usually it. And then because anti-gliadin IgA, so that's looking at reactive levels to gluten. And I mean, it was there. I mean, some people are super low. So But it wasn't enough to say, okay, you gotta, it's gluten for sure. So that's where I was like honing in on the dairy.
Yeah, I'm not gluten-free. I'm not a gluten-free eater, but I don't eat a lot of gluten either. I think I handle it okay.
Yeah. Okay. And because most people know. But what I will say, and like I tell people that do like the food sensitivity testing, is be just like allergies. You have something, you're allergic to it, you know, immediately. Food
Yeah,
sensitivities, it could be up to 3 days later, and that's where it just gets tricky. So
right,
that's where it's like, you know, logging. What did I have 3 days ago? I mean, who does that? You know,
right.
nobody. Yeah. So, and then this last marker here is a marker of inflammation, and you were at 0. So that was all good. And that's it.
Fantastic. Well, this whole process was really fascinating to go through, Cheri. And how did I do? How does this look compared to others? I think you said you've done around 2,000 of these.
Yeah, close to that. I mean, it's a lot. So we have
Yeah,
enough. I have enough to like base. Now, keeping in mind that the people that come to us, they come to us for weight loss and gut health. So they know that they have issues,
right.
and you are healthy. So you know, with that, like I told you at the first time we talked, yours is by far the best I've seen.
Outstanding. But I'm one of the few people who's come to you in a proactive way. Most have some problem. And so you already know out of the gate that they're going to have um, worse results. That being said, I found it really affirming to have this test done because I had no idea, like I said. And for you to tell me it was the best test you'd seen out of thousands, I was like, okay, that's really, really awesome. And then it also was affirming to me because of our Dirobi undiet, which is how I live and eat. And
Mhm.
I think that there's 4 things that I think have helped me with this. And I wanted to run them by you, Cheri, and then also see your thoughts and add anything else that you think for anyone who wants to improve their gut health, what other habits I might have missed. But there's 4 things specifically that I think help. Number 1 is I'm really good at drinking water. I've made it a habit, and I drink half my body weight in ounces of water every day. I've got to assume, you know, knowing that many people are dehydrated chronically. How big a part do you think that water plays in gut health?
It's everything. I mean, it's the most foundational piece. I mean, because
Okay.
it does so much just for the health of the whole body, not even, you know, not even the gut. You know, so it's like if you don't have that and you try to do all these other things, it's I mean, again, it's just you're going to be held back if you don't have hydration.
Okay, fantastic. The next
Mhm.
one is we teach, and I live by this, to eat 5 to 9 servings of vegetables and fruits every single day. I do some of that with powders. I personally find it very difficult to get 5 to 9 servings of veggies every day. And so 2 of those servings will come from powders. And the other thing I do, and I've done this for quite a long time, is I add a small amount of psyllium husk to 2 to 3 of my drinks every single day.
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts on that as far as how that would play out in having good gut health?
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's obviously huge because, you know, our healthy bacteria feed on the prebiotics in our fruits and vegetables, that and the fiber. I mean, that's what feeds our healthy bacteria. That's why your 2 keystone species were, you know, not elevated, but like higher on the higher end, which is excellent. What I will say is people with gut issues have huge problems with certain vegetables and huge
Okay.
problems with certain fruits. So
Okay.
that's where it gets tricky because some people will literally not even eat vegetables anymore because the second they start to eat it, they can't digest it. You know, they don't have enzymes that are breaking it down. They get bloated immediately. So they there's that component. So it's not like we can just say eat broccoli or eat like we have to do some digging so we know that we're not causing an inflammation when we're telling them to eat their broccoli every day.
Okay, and that brings me to the next thing. The other thing I do is I take our own product, which is called Eat Anything. I'm not sure if we talked about this. The bottle looks like this, and it is a malabsorption product, Cheri. So We specifically designed it for people with malabsorption issues.
Okay.
And it has xyloisomerase, alpha galacto, I can never pronounce this one, galacto galactodase, lacto-wise for lactose, and
Very cool.
APLC digestive enzyme. So there's a combination, what those things are is a combination of enzymes, prebiotics,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
probiotics. Now, many people take this product before they eat, 20 minutes before they eat, to help digest food and absorb it properly without the stomach pain and bloating, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have obvious, noticeable absorption issues. I don't have pain after I eat, that type of thing. So I just take one in the morning and I take one at night, and I've done that for years. But back to that one, and whether it's our product or other products, of course, I love it when people take our products. But generally speaking, as far as people taking a prebiotic, probiotic, enzyme supplement, what do you think about that?
I think it's super important. I mean, if you are not if your own body is not breaking down those, the food that you're consuming, that is when, I mean, it again creates so many different downstream issues. And one of the big ones is it can create autoimmunity, because now larger food particles are getting through the system when they shouldn't be. And if you're taking the enzymes, you're still breaking that up into those small pieces, which is how your body assimilates them. So we're always recommending enzymes. I take enzymes too. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. I mean, and like you said, you don't have discomfort after. It's like you feel that. You feel the effect almost immediately with them.
Okay. And then the other health habit that I started, I wish I would have logged this or made a note on the date that I started intermittent fasting. I can't remember. It might be 3 or 4 years ago, but it's been a few years. And part of the sales pitch for intermittent fasting, part of the promised benefits, is that when you stop eating after dinner, let's say 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock p.m., that your body gets to spend time digesting, producing the hormones like melatonin to prepare you for sleep. And then during the night, because the body's main energy is used by the brain and the stomach, right? That
Mm-hmm.
when the body doesn't have to be working so hard on digestion, it gets to go to work on pathogens and bacteria and viruses and carcinogens. And it does that. And then if we're drinking lots of water at the same time, so we have this period of time every single day where we're just giving our whole digestive system a time to rejuvenate.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to think that's another really great habit for getting a good result on a test like this.
I mean, 100%. I mean, fasting, I mean, we all need to be fasting. We need to be going periods of time without food. It truly is the time when your body can start focusing on other stuff, because we have gotten in the habit as Americans, as we're eating every 3-4 hours. Your body's working nonstop on digestion and doesn't have any time to do anything else. So I think, now what I will say is I think some people, for whatever reason may not do well with intermittent fasting, but the majority of people, we are always talking about extending your meals, and it's huge if you do it through the night and you have an earlier dinner. So I think that played a huge role in your results for sure.
Okay, and it was super interesting. A few weeks ago, I had Dr. Joseph Antoon on the show, and his outfit is doing some of the world's best research down at UCLA on fasting and intermittent fasting, and a concept that they've developed called the fasting mimicking diet.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, Cheri, that I thought was interesting, to your point about some people struggling with fasting, he was quite convinced that 12 hours is a really good window. He said for people that struggle, everyone's talking about 16 hours of fasting, and, the 8-hour eating window, or even 6-hour eating window, or 4-hour eating window.
Mm-hmm.
But he said there's very little research to bear that out. And that for many, many people, if they just stopped eating after 7 at night and had breakfast at 7 in the morning, that's a 12-hour fast and could do them a world of good. And I thought that was quite liberating for those people who are never going to kind of become comfortable with a longer eating window. But, that's based on a whole lot of research they've been doing for a very long time. So that was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And and if you think about it, because I have dug into that research, we actually do a fasting with food whole program. But what's so important about that research is that everybody can go 12 hours. And it's the people that maybe don't even know this information, where they're just grabbing a handful of something and now they've destroyed their 12-hour fast. And if they have that information, how easy is it for them to not grab that little something or take a drink of something that literally just that simple thing took them out and destroyed the fast, So, I mean, it's powerful for sure.
Yeah. And I also wouldn't want people to make excuses about it either. Again, this goes back to how tough it is for us to really personally figure out the key to our health lock. For example, when I started intermittent fasting, I did want to eventually hit an 8-hour eating window. And Cheri, it was hard. I hated it. I went through about 60 days where, first of all, I was hungry after dinner, and part of it might have just been emotional. I was used to sitting and eating and snacking with my wife as we watch TV at the end of the day or play games or whatever we're going to do. And so for me to stop snacking after dinner was really hard. And then in the morning, I woke up hungry, and I didn't feel like exercising on an empty stomach. And so it took me about 60 days of pain and suffering, but I just, worked through it. And then all of a sudden, everything flipped for me, where all of a sudden, the thought of eating food in the morning was repulsive, first thing. Instead, I felt really good. It was time to do my morning routine, and I felt really good about my morning routine. My hunger didn't start to set in till a little bit later on. So I think that there's a balance there. I think that for some people, they might feel like they can't do the shorter eating window, but they might have to power through it for a while. But I think that 12 hours is a minimum, and working up to 16 hours is probably a really great health habit for most people.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is an adaptation, just like starting a new exercise, right? Like you have to build up to that. Your body has to start to acclimate to it. And like you said, I mean, it's amazing, like how not only is it easier, but then you don't even want the other option or the other thing that you used to be doing, So it can be. I know for me, like I usually try to do the fasting with food because I need like a little, but then I can go the whole day, without food. So.
Fantastic. Just a matter of personal experimentation and determining whether you're being wimpy and need to push a little harder, or whether this is just best for you. Those are tough decisions for people to make. So I just throw out all these ideas for people to think about. All that being said, Cheri, this was a really fun and fascinating thing to go through. I found it very validating for the lifestyle that I live. And so I was really happy to do it because it was a mystery to me, what was going on in my gut. And you have demystified it. And I really appreciate that. And you've also come up with $100 off code for our listeners, right? So if they want to get this test done, they can save $100.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, everyone needs to be doing it at least once in their life. That's for sure.
Okay. And so how do they get the $100 off?
So they can just email admin@waylossmd.com and just literally put $100 code, and then we will follow up and get them all set up on the GI map.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. I highly recommend it to all of you listening. These are the types of things that you may uncover a real important key to your lock. It could be an autoimmune issue that you're dealing with. It could be something you're not dealing with yet, but that you will be dealing with if you don't root this out. And so I think it's very valuable. I think we're very blessed to live in a day and age where we can have tests like this. Our ancestors couldn't do anything like this, right? This is just amazing that the world of biohacking has brought us to this point where we can be so proactive in our health and find out what's going on, possibly even before it's symptomatic.
Absolutely.
It's powerful stuff. Well, Cheri, closing thoughts before I let you go.
Yeah, I think I would just say, really, I think we need to spend a little more time really thinking about how we feel and how we can feel our best. We go through life just kind of accepting, feeling okay. And we have the capacity to live like with energy every day, not just not trying to get through the day. So this is an opportunity to dig into that foundation and improving just overall health.
Well, fantastic. And tell us your website one more time.
waylessmd.com.
Well, thanks so much, Cheri, for coming on the show. It's been really interesting and a
Thank you.
fascinating process. Yeah, and for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.